So hello everyone who's tuning in with us tonight. Thank you for joining us. My name is Haley and I'm one of the admins for CBE Voices of Color. And today on our December episode of Admin Speak, we're going to be talking about the topic of interracial relationships and specifically marriages, because all of us are married who are here today, but just also with broader relevance for people in relationships generally. So we're just going to start off by having every couple or every representative of a couple introduce themselves. Just names, how long you've been together, your ethnic backgrounds, anything else you want to share about your relationships. So I'll start. So my name's Haley, and this is my husband, Nick. And so we have been together, I guess, 3 years now. We just got married. Let me check. The webinar streaming to Facebook got interrupted. Let me just fix that here. Alrighty. Okay, here we go. Okay. All right. I'm gonna start over if that's all right. All right, we're all set up now. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Haley, and I'm one of the admins of CBE Voices of Color. We're so excited for you to be tuning in tonight for our December episode of Admin Speak, which is on the topic of interracial relationships, and specifically for the guests who are here today, interracial marriages. And so as we get started here, we're just going to have each couple or each representative of a couple introduce themselves. And so just talk about, what each of your names are, how long you've been together, what each of your ethnic backgrounds are, any other information that you want to share. So we'll start. So my name is Haley.
I'm Nick.
And we've been married since June of this year, and we've been together for 3 years. And my ethnic background is that I am white and East Indian, so like the country India.
And I am white.
So yeah, that's the two of us.
And I am Elizabeth. I'm also one of the admin at CBE Voices of Color. And this is my husband, Mark. We've been together, we've known each other for about 8 years. We've been married for about 3 years. I am white and Korean.
And I'm Haitian.
So I'm Allie, and I am a contributor for CBE, and I am representing myself, and this is my husband, Ben, and a picture of our 2 daughters. Ben is a behind-the-scenes person. He can and does speak publicly, but he was just like, I don't want to do this. And so he's supportive, but he did not like the idea of being on a webinar at all, which is hilarious because he works in the field of software development and this other stuff. So he's in front of a computer all the time, but didn't want to be in front of a camera attached to a computer. So anyway, so I am Black, I'm African American, and Ben is white, and we have known each other for about 19 years. We've been together for 16 years, I guess almost going on 17 years now. We've been married for 13 and a half years. I can say that now because we got married in June of 2005. And it's now December, so I guess it's 13 and a half years, almost 14 years. We'll celebrate 14 years in June. We've known each other since we were freshmen in high school. We met in band. He played the trumpet and I was a percussionist. And then we started dating our junior year. And then we got married the summer after our freshman year of college. And so we've been together for a really long time. And of course, we've been interracial for that entire duration.
Well, thank you all for sharing that and introducing yourselves to our listeners. So our first kind of real question to get into the webinar here is we're going to start on a positive note. So all of us, right, are in interracial relationships that we really appreciate, right, and we love our partners. And so we just want to first think about what is something that you appreciate about how your partner approaches your ethnic background, or how in your relationship the two of you are able to share your different ethnic backgrounds.
Who goes first?
Anybody who wants. You, go ahead.
I think for me, it's the fact that we've had the opportunity to live in, my home country and, her family's home country. And that kind of definitely helped us have better perspective of, like each other's upbringings, and also both of us having immigrant mothers in America, that was something that definitely helped us like bond. And yeah, for me, that was it, having that opportunity and being able to go to Korea and see that, not everybody likes salt the way we do in Haiti, so we over-season everything, in Korea they do not.
Maybe we overheat everything.
Yeah, we overcook
really spicy.
Yeah. So, it was just little things like that, that kind of really helped me like understand and become closer. And the fact that, when we met, she had volunteered like 3 months of her life to Haiti, and then after that, she stayed there even after the organizations, after the 2010 earthquake, a lot of organizations after about a year, they started pulling out, people started leaving, but she was one of the very few who outside of the organization, she looked for work and, she was into other projects and she just really wanted to be there, and so for me, that was great. It showed me where her heart was and it allowed her to also just, see where I'm from and understand how things work and, know why I am the way I am, and accept that and understand that. And so for me, that's what it was.
Yeah, I think definitely from the very beginning, we met, in a very cross-cultural environment, and we both grew up in multi-ethnic environments and homes, and so I think that when we came into the relationship, we both had an awareness, of some of what the challenges can be, and also the beauty that can come out of that, exchange and that relationship, deep relationship with people who are different than you. And I'm the product of an interracial marriage, and I'm really grateful for that. And I think that the way that Mark has stepped in and become a part of my family and now our family. I really, really appreciate and value that like intentional effort that we both, and especially Mark, has made.
Yeah, so for us, with me being African American, my husband being white, being in America, I think that race has always sort of played a part in our relationship. And so we got together whenever we were fairly young. And so that was, I think, very fortuitous for both of us because I think it gave us the chance to sort of grow together in the challenges that come with a relationship like ours. And of course, I mean, from the very beginning of our relationship, that was something that I brought to the table that I knew would be a thing. And then as we progressed to being engaged and to getting married, that was something that, and then to having children even, those were all elements that I wanted to make sure was at the forefront. And so I was I've been very appreciative of how Ben has always been very much just listening to me and trusting me. And I think that is something that is so important because often, white privilege, I think, will cloud people, and I think that especially, particularly for like a younger man that who hasn't experienced a whole lot of life, that sometimes can it can create just some back and forth or whatever. But we've never really had that. He's always been very receptive to anything. Like I'm like, this is racist. Like this thing happened and it was racist, or I've had this experience here, there, or the other. And even if he isn't able to see it himself, or even if it's a situation where, especially like earlier in our relationship, where he was learning a lot because we grew up in the same town, we have a lot of the same formative experiences, but then I had a lot of different experiences, and I think that's very interesting because we both grew up literally in the same place, in the same town of less than 10,000 people. But his experiences in town, the places that he could go, and the people that accepted him and whatever, were very different than it was for me. And so just that he was able to that throughout this time he's been able to trust me and to trust me whenever I say that there's an issue, and to have my back and to back me up. That's something that I very much appreciate.
Yeah, that's awesome. And both of you have said, I think, like, relates to what I appreciate about Nick and about our relationship. First, like the food. I think food is like really something that draws people together. And like I really appreciate that. Like, so for example, for our wedding, we did both Southern and Indian food. And I really appreciated that Nick was like totally on board with that and was like excited about that. And like if I make Indian food, right, like that's something he's excited about. So I think that's meaningful to me, that even like if it's not part of his cultural background, that is something that he like really embraces. And like will even ask me, right, like to make Indian food. So I think that is important to me, especially because I'm biracial. I don't necessarily have a lot of connections to India in ways other than food, right? So like dress is not something that I necessarily have a strong connection with, or language. Like I've never been to India, but food is something that is really meaningful to me. So I think that's meaningful. And then also, like as we're a pretty newlywed couple, but I think we're already like learning a lot about each other in terms of just improving communication, of how like these different racial experiences make us feel, or even moving to Charleston where like racism just looks different than when we were living in Connecticut or Ohio. So I think like that we're just been able to communicate about how these experiences make us feel like really openly. I think that's something I really appreciate.
Yeah, my best friend growing up was Indian. It's actually like his parents were like just another set of parents that like I had, so it was pretty incredible. like they were really like a second mom and dad to me. And so it's kind of cool to have, I don't know, that childhood experience continued with like Haley's Indian family, and to be going to Indian restaurants, having her making Indian food, stuff like that is, I don't know, there's like a comfort there that I really appreciate. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like also, right, just a happenstance that I think makes things a lot easier, right? That like you grew up, even though your family like wasn't Indian, you grew up like with almost like a second Indian family. So I think that has made things a lot easier just in terms of like that things that like my family does are very recognizable to you because like you had that background growing up. So I think that does make things a lot easier. Okay, so then our next question is now on the difficult side of things. So what is something that's been difficult for you as a couple because you have different ethnic backgrounds? And then also, has gender like had an impact on this difficulty? And if so, how do you navigate that?
Sure.
I think for us, living abroad has been the most challenging because, you know, we get to see like the difference of, you know, passports and, you know, the skin tone and just all the pros and cons that come with it, you know. So for me, even though that my father is Haitian American and my mom was Haitian, I was born in Haiti, so I have a Haiti passport, and she has an American passport, of course. And so traveling has been very challenging, you know, because whenever we arrive at a new destination, I'm always held up in immigration and asked extra questions while she just kind of like flies right by, you know, waits for me on the other side. Sometimes we are on the plane not knowing the outcome of when we land, you know. I've actually in Korea, because we're both, you know, from different countries, and we got married in a third country, in Dominican Republic, you know, a destination wedding. In Korea, they, for some reason, didn't or wouldn't acknowledge our marriage license and requested that it was registered in either of our home countries. But as we tried to do that, we found out that, you know, in our home countries, they don't register anything. You know, they just accept whatever document you provide, so they weren't able to help us. So for 2 years living in Korea, I had to do visa runs every 3 months. So I've been to Hong Kong like 6 times, you know. Eventually at one point, I felt that they weren't gonna let me in, so I had to spend some time away. I spent like a month and a half away from her, away from our dogs, you know, while in Taiwan. And, you know, even though traveling, of course, you know, it's a great experience, and you know, we did our best to make the best out of it. It's hard, you know, it's hard being separate from someone you see every day, and now you have to be away from them even for a week, even for 4 days, even for 5 days. You know, it was hard. And then it eventually caused us to leave Korea because they didn't want to give me the papers that allowed me to like stay there permanently. So, and I was tired of, you know, having to take a plane, you know, every 3 months. So we decided, you know, I looked online and I was searching for places that, you know, that I was able to go without a problem. And I found it, you know, I found Cambodia and I talked to her. And at the time also, we were really struggling financially. We just kept getting hit with, you know, she was really sick. She had surgery. And, you know, there were other things that were coming, you know, and it was just really throwing us off in Korea. It just derailed our plans completely from before we moved. So we came to Cambodia. The second we arrived to Cambodia, the same thing. It appeared that, like, you know, it used to be really easy to get a year-long visa. And then months before we moved, the government just completely changed everything. And as soon as we arrived, they looked at our passports, and I requested a 6-month visa. She requested a 6-month visa, which they should have given to both of us. But he took it to his supervisor. He came back and he said no. And I asked him why. He said, because you're from Haiti. she's from America. So you can have a 1-month visa, and she's gonna get a 6-month visa. So I've been to Malaysia 3 times now, but I was able to open up a business, and with the business visa, I can extend it for however long. So I had to open up a business. Well, we opened up a business together, and we're just waiting for those papers to like come in so that we both can finally just like be stable in one place, because it's going on 3 years now of just not knowing the outcome, working hard, trying to save, adopting animals, and not knowing if I'll be able to see them the next day, or, will they let me in because of the type of questions that they ask me. And I think that's been, one of the most biggest challenges for us.
And I think for me, actually, I don't know for you, but that rejection from Korean immigration, the refusal to acknowledge our marriage, the fact that there are certain types of visas that are available based on birthright, as a Korean person living abroad, or living in another country or from another country. And so I essentially in Korea have all of the same rights through my the visa that I'm granted as a citizen of South Korea. And yet even in that, they still reject my husband based on racism, because it's based on the perception of the country that he's from and not based on anything else, because we have the same documents to present, we have the same financial records, we have everything that they request and require for immigration. We have the same qualifications, and so it's wholly based on the country that you're from, and their perception. Most people actually do not know where Haiti is, and they assume that it's a part of Africa and in East Asia, and in South Asia. They have a lot of really, really bad assumptions about people from African nations. And so going through that was, I think, really painful for both of us, and painful for me to see how my culture and my nationality is being used against my husband as well. So yeah, I think a lot of what we've experienced has come from the outside, and people's different perceptions of us. And I do think gender comes into play there. With me being an Asian woman, the stereotypes that people tend to project is, the gentle, quiet, submissive, which I am not, and this complete opposite stereotype is projected on him as being, this threatening, aggressive, scary man, Black man, and the ways that we have to navigate that in the world are really different. The ways that we each choose to navigate that, and have learned to survive breaking those stereotypes, or at times, going along with those stereotypes to survive. And so that's come up multiple times, I think, in our relationship, and the way that we interact with the world. And we've had to talk with each other about why do we, react to situations the way that we do, and at what times does he choose to step back and let me take the lead, and what times do I step back and let him take the lead. And it's really, the process of learning to prioritize one another's voices based on the situation and the experience, and really who's most at risk in any given experience, interaction.
Yeah, and on top of that, like she said, a lot of those things play into the decisions that we make. It literally was the cause and the reason. Well, it played a huge role in cutting my hair. So I had dreads that I was wearing for the past 2 years. And I was like, I want to go through immigration. I want to look not as scary, So I just decided, I just got my clippers in the bathroom. And she woke up one morning and she was like, your head, I don't want them to see it. And, they don't know it. They don't understand it. So I just decided, to cut it. And another thing what she was saying about the roles is that, for example, I lived in America. I lived in Miami with my mom, and I experienced police brutality. The same as what we've seen online. And so when it comes to speaking to authority, and knowing how people outside of the United States, especially developing countries, feel about my country, I have a way and a system of speaking to them. I stay as polite and as gentle as possible. But sometimes when we're next to each other and we're speaking to immigration, she does not come off as aggressive, but because of how gentle, I'm tiptoeing around the situation, some of the things that she says and the way that she says comes off aggressive, and it makes me very nervous, because in my mind I'm like, okay, if we get kicked out or if we get held, she has a country that will speak up for her and that will defend her. And Haiti just closed the only embassy that they had in all of Africa last week, so I have very limited representation, so those are times where I ask her if she could, kind of just pull back a little bit, because I already have an idea of how this is going to go, and no amount of aggression or no amount of questions will really change the situation, because their minds are already made up, from the second that they see me, and so, those have definitely been lessons that we've learned, and, learn how to just navigate the world and, what comes with it.
Yeah, so being married for 13 years and living in rural Missouri, which is, I don't live in rural Missouri now. I live in the third largest city in Missouri, but growing up in rural Missouri and living in a place that is fairly white, there's a lot of difficulties that I've encountered, so I'll just stick to the ones that are gender-based. The first set of difficulties, so I'm in ministry. I'm a minister. I've been in ministry since 2003, something like that, full-time ministry since 2008. And my husband has been there with me, but he's not a full-time ministry. That's not his vocation. It's something that he does sort of on a volunteer basis. Wherever we're at, he'll chip in and help. And so I've been in spaces where as a female in spaces even that purport to be egalitarian, in spaces where I'm the leader, I'm the sole, often Black female leader, and just in interacting with people. For example, I was a youth pastor at a church. I was a high school pastor in a student ministry that had several different divisions. And so I was a high school pastor, and I was also on staff of the church in another capacity. And it was always interesting to see how people would interact with me versus how they would interact with my husband, because my husband actually was on staff at the church too, technically, but he was a volunteer. He was just a very, 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 very high level volunteer. He might have even been the highest level volunteer that we had there. So anyway, it would be very interesting to watch how people interacted with me versus how they would interact with him. And so, my husband and I, we have very similar demeanor. I'm maybe a little bit more outgoing than him, but we're both fairly introverted people. But I grew up around extroverts, so I am on the surface a little bit more outgoing. And so, but we have the same demeanor, kind of approach things very, very similarly. And I remember one time I asked someone if they would drive a bus for a youth event, and give them just some directives of some things that needed to be done. And they were like, "Oh, I'm not sure if I can do that. Like, I don't know. I need to check with the leader, the person who's above you in leadership, who's a white guy, and whatever." They didn't say it like that, but that was basically what it was. So then, so I was kind of like, okay, that's really strange. And so I realized that if I sent Ben to do things that I knew would normally, like, I would get a no response from people, or they would act put out or irritated that I had asked them to do it. If I sent Ben to do it, people would be like, "Oh yeah, man, that's okay. Like, that's wonderful." And I watched this happen time and again. And that was, I mean, it was, race or gender, take your pick. And really it was a combination of both. But even being in spaces as a leader where I would be the leader and people wouldn't listen to me. But then if my husband, who has no leadership capacity at all, he's not getting paid to do anything. He's not really anything except for there as a volunteer. But if he said it, everybody wanted to listen to him. Everybody wanted to, it was, okay, I can do this, no problem. You got it, whatever. And so that's in the church. And so that was one difficulty. And then the other thing, another thing that has presented difficulty for us, and I say difficulty, that what I just mentioned definitely was difficult because it's frustrating. You're trying to do your job and people won't let you be great doing your job because they're sexist and they're racist, and so that sucks. But in terms of but the other thing is it's difficult as in it's more, I guess, annoying than it is like this is something that's a hardship. But just even the way that we both carry ourselves so ethnically. My husband is Swiss and German, and then like they're from it's like the Germany area, so Germany, Prussia, but that's sort of their cultural identity as a family is German, and so and like they very much are all German. They've all for the most part intermarried for generations, German and everything. So their approach, their demeanor is often very kind of stoic, very low key, almost kind of passive. And not saying that German people are passive, but that's just even like his family culture. Like they're kind of a little bit more passive, a little bit more maybe people would say like easygoing or whatever. Where I'm African American, I'm an introvert, but like I have a big personality. And I have a lot of personality. I don't try, like there's nothing that I try to do. I've been told that whenever I walk into a room that I command attention whenever I walk into a room. It's not anything that I do like on purpose or anything, but whenever that is together and we're interacting, what it comes, I think that what often people have read from us is that, oh, you're the one who's in charge, and then he's just the guy that's over here doing whatever. And I've been criticized. I've been criticized. People have used language like oh, you guys are such a weird couple, because we really don't fit gender stereotypes. It's not anything that we're like intentionally trying to flout people's culture or trying to flout people's ideas of gender normativity or whatever, but we just don't do that. So they add that on top of me being a Black woman, where I can be loud, I have a big personality, all these other things, and people kind of look at that really differently. And because my husband is just so passive or whatever, it's like, oh, well, you must be running over him or whatever. And it's like, no, it's nothing like that. Like, we talk about everything, and like most of the time he genuinely doesn't care about stuff. He genuinely just like, I don't really care. And then if he has an opinion about something, or if I have an opinion about something, we listen to one another, and then we make the decision to do whatever it is that we do. I'm not the only person in my home that can cook. In fact, I'm in seminary. I'm not the primary cook, but between two pregnancies where I was laid up all the time and being in seminary and working like weird hours and stuff with ministry, I am not the primary cook in my home. I'm not the primary housekeeper in my home. I don't share the cooking by the time with the kids. I'm like, look, you can do it. Like I'm a better cook than my husband, but he's learned. He's had to learn and step his game up and like learn how to use seasoning and that type of stuff because like he didn't know how to season food, but that's a whole other different thing. But like we operate as a team, and we operate as a unit. And like with our kids, like, I mean, he's probably better at this point at telling you exactly what size and stuff that they are right now. Especially like with I know our oldest, because she's like a little bit slower in growing now, but like because she's 4, but with our young, like, I'm like, I don't know, I just put all the clothes that are there. That's sort of what my life is right now. But I mean, he's the one that's there, that's buying the clothes. And it's like, okay, you know, she's 2T now, 3T too big. Like, I'm trying to put her in the 3T stuff, and it's like, no, that's too big. She's 2T pants, 3T tops, sort of. But like, we don't adhere to those kind of typical ideas of what a husband and wife should look like. And then I think that our cultures, our respective cultural / ethnic / racial identities, it almost compounds some of that, because where I've observed that white women are able to get away with a little bit more in that respect than what I am, they're a little bit less, I mean, they still get criticized, you know, don't get me wrong, it's not the Impression Olympics at all, but the criticism comes in a different way. And, you know, there's this, you know, Mark was talking about the perception of being aggressive, even like if you're not aggressive, the perception of being aggressive, or the perception of being a bully, or being somebody that is ruling somebody rather than leading with somebody. Those perceptions I've run into, and those are things that we very much have encountered as a couple, and that because we've been together for a long time, and kind of what works for us. And so, you know, I had to learn really early on. We got married whenever we were 19 years old. So I learned like really early on, people are going to have an opinion about what your life is, and people are going to have an opinion about who you are as a couple, and people's racism, it will even kind of these weird sort of ways that are like, what? Like, are you really that racist though? But it'll come out like in some of the weird, or like, are you really that sexist? Like, it'll come out and sort of, it manifests in sort of some of these weird kind of ways. But I just learned early on, like, you know, I'm out here, and I am who I am, and I can't change who I am. Because, you know, I would see people, like, especially in the church, you know, there's sort of this, because I've been in egalitarian spaces, or spaces that purport to be egalitarian, but maybe they're even like soft-complementarian or whatever, where their idea even, or I'll say it this way, their idea of egalitarianism is different than mine. And so, like, so feeling that weight of, oh, well, maybe like I'm not being submissive enough because my submission doesn't look like hers. And it's like, no, like, homie, submission isn't just like being a yes woman. Like, that ain't submission at all. Submission is whenever it's like, you know what? I think that you're wrong. I think that you're really wrong. And I think that whatever it is that you want to do is dumb, but I'm going to go ahead and go along with it. And I'm not going to complain about it. And I'm going to go along with it. And then, you know what? If it goes, hey, awesome. And then if it doesn't go, then it's like, well, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. And we've lived that moment dozens of times in our marriage. There's times where I get frustrated, but I'm like, if you just would have listened to me, we wouldn't be having to deal with this. And then there's other times where I've been adamant, like this, like I think this is wrong. This isn't gonna work. This is whatever. And then my husband was like, but no, like this is like I think like, and I'm just like, okay, whatever. And then whatever it is happens, and then I'm like, oh. Yeah, that actually worked. But that's what submission is, and it's not about like being this this and not that there's anything wrong with having a quiet personality, but it's not just about like shut up and do what I say because of who I perceive myself to be in the relationship. So that was something that I had to learn really early on, that like I'm a Black woman. I don't have an opinion about something, and I'm going to tell you my opinion about it. And that doesn't make me unsubmissive. That is I'm a person with agency, and I'm going to say what I think and feel. And my husband, the same way. I mean, he might he's not as vivacious as I am, but there are times whenever he disagrees with me, and he doesn't think. But he's like, okay, I'm just going to go along with it. Just sometimes it's even just like for peace sake, because I don't want to hear about it, so I'm just going to go along with it. And then, I mean, for real, I can say this because he's not here. I'm right like most of the time. I'm just going to throw that out there. That I don't keep a record because 1 Corinthians 13 says that we ain't supposed to do that. But if there was to be a record, I would have a winning record. I just want to throw that out there. Yeah. See, yeah. But I would have a winning record if we kept records. But I love it that we're able to do that we're able to mutually submit to one another, and that we just kind of had to close the noise out. And I think that for my husband, especially like as a white man, I think he'll probably tell you as a white man, where it's sort of like the world is your oyster, to have to listen to somebody. And there's times where I'm like, look, I need you to stop white duding right now and just listen to me. And like it's like, oh, because it's sort of like the world is your oyster, and it's like you're acting really privileged right now, and you're missing something that I'm saying. Like you're missing the nuance because your privilege is keeping you from seeing what the issue is here. And we've had that discussion several times too. And as I said earlier, I'm really appreciative that my husband will listen. Like whenever I'm like, hold up. This is privilege. Like we had this conversation about something with our kids, a couple weeks ago, where I was like, you aren't seeing this issue because you're not in a Black or brown body. So like your idea of how this should go, it's not going to work for us. So please listen to what I'm telling you so that you understand. And then it was like, oh, okay. I was being really privileged just to be like, oh, I can just ignore this and whatever. And so that's how we roll. That's how we kind of have to find that middle ground, even in the midst of our difficulty, because there's a lot of things that can be really, really difficult. With the racial component, and then whenever you throw in gender and you throw in also being in ministry on top of that, and just all of the things, the whole reason why CBE exists is that there's these whole kind of constellation of issues that surround gender in the church. And so you throw race on top of that, you throw being an interracial couple in that, and it's a whole thing.
I love what you said, Allie, about like how mutual submission can look different, like depending on like how a couple interacts with each other and like individual personalities. So I think that's super true, like that you can't just like put a mold over what it is supposed to look like, but each couple has to like kind of figure that out for themselves. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
Oh, I can go.
Okay.
Yeah, I think a big thing that I've been learning, especially since Haley and I got married, has been sort of like you were talking about, like my default perspective is like the world is good, right? And it's like set up in a way that's really good. And like I have a tendency to like really not want to hear anything about the world being bad. And it's just like a nasty, default perspective that I think is just the product of, I was raised in a very sort of like white upper class enclave. And I think I just like wasn't, I don't know, I had never personally been exposed to like racism. It's been damaging, of course, or any sort of gender bias has been damaging. And so it's honestly, it's been a struggle, like talking through a lot of it with Haley, because like a lot of the time, like I just want to think that everything's good in the world. It's like set up for me to succeed. So it's hard to hear that sometimes.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely something that like both the race component and the gender component fit into, like because I'm a woman of color and because he's a white man, like we can have like we can talk past each other sometimes, like about race and also about gender. And like I just like want him to immediately understand like what I'm thinking about race and gender, like without explaining. And I think the conversations always go way better when both of us like take a step back and are like, okay, hold on, like we are going into this conversation with totally different assumptions, and to just like step back and like figure out, especially I feel like sometimes like conversations about like racial or gender injustice, like I think feel to him more like intellectual conversations, and like to me they feel more like emotional, like deeply impactful conversations. And sometimes like it's not what I'm framing when I'm like bringing the issue up. It's not clear that I'm framing it as like, oh, this was upsetting to me, like I want to share why it was upsetting. Sometimes it sounds like, oh, like this news is happening in the world, let's like decide what we think about this news, you know, which are two really different conversations. And so I think like as that we've gotten better at figuring out like, okay, what kind of conversation are we each wanting to have, and like rooting it more in our own experiences, because obviously, right, like because like you love me, so like you care if I'm like upset about something, right? So like if we can frame the conversation better, right, then the conversation goes a lot better, in terms of like we being able to empathize, and so, and I think that again, because we are like a fairly new couple, I think that like we've had a lot of growth like in the past several months in terms of that. And also like as I have gotten like more invested in like racial justice in the past several years, I think, and gender justice, I think like both of those, like as I've like continued thinking about it more, have meant that we talk about it more as a couple. And so that has definitely been a learning process, for us both. Yeah. So our next question, a lot of our responses so far have touched on this already, but in your social circles, whatever those circles might look like, what is the culture like around interracial relationships? Like, do you feel like they're generally viewed as like something that's like worthy of suspicion, or that it's pretty much fine, like people can be in relationships with whoever they want, or like what do you feel like the culture is in the different places you are?
So I feel like that people fetishize interracial relationships, particularly black-white interracial relationships, which I find extremely annoying. And before we had kids, we were married for about 8 years, about 8 or 9 years before we had kids. And so so the whole time, like before we had kids, oh, your kids are going to be so cute, blah, 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 blah. And I mean, my kids are cute though. Like, but my kids are cute, but it's not because they're biracial. Like, they're cute because they're cute. And so it's like I feel super fetishized like most of the time, like around most people. I feel like that has sort of has kind of tempered down a little bit. I think that as the national conversation about race has changed in the last several years, I noticed that I get a lot less of that. I get a lot less of like, oh, you're not. I get a lot less of that because I think that people are afraid of saying the wrong thing, which I'm totally okay with because it got on my nerve like 13 years ago. It definitely gets on my nerve today. So I'm not like missing that aspect of it at all. But I think that people like, at least like I said, I mean, I feel like that at least in the places where I've walked, I feel like that it's been very fetishized, but at the same time that it's been very fetishized, I also feel very invisible. And I feel very invisible because black-white interracial relationships where the woman is black, those are a minority still. Like I feel like they maybe only constitute like maybe 20% of black-white interracial marriages. I think it's like 87% or something like that of interracial relationships and marriages are where the female is white. And so I feel like very like just invisible. Like I mean, we don't get representation like hardly in media. We did get representation. I won't spoil the movie Widows for you, but we did go through that. And be careful with that movie, y'all, because I was surprised by some nudity and some stuff in it. Just FYI, if you're squeamish about that type of stuff. But I won't spoil the movie. But we were represented in the movie, and I kind of walked away like, ooh, we were represented. Ooh. And that was the second time that I walked away from a movie feeling like that. Like Get Out, I guess, was representing interracial, the inverse of my relationship, and it was like, ooh, I feel suspicious now. like that meme of like the black woman and white man in bed, like, and she's looking like whatever. That's been me. But for real, I think that so it's like, you know, feeling hyper visible, and both hyper visible and invisible at the same time. Where it's hyper visible because it's like, oh, your kids are gonna be so cute, blah, blah, blah. But then completely invisible in the respect of, even, you know, among interracial couples, even to be black-white interracial is still like more represented than any of your guys' racial configuration or whatever. But still feeling that invisibility as a black woman, where it's like people just almost don't act like, sometimes they just don't want to see you as an interracial couple. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe you have experienced that, maybe you haven't, but I feel like where it's almost like, okay, yeah, we see that you're an interracial couple, but also like no, you're just gonna act like you guys are like a white couple, and we're not gonna consider like how being an interracial couple would affect you guys. So like being out to dinner with friends, especially like whenever we first got married, we'd go out to dinner and stuff with friends a lot, and most of our friends were white and were in monoracial couples, and time would come to get the check, and all the white people's couples checks would come together, and then ours would come separately, or we would be asked. Everybody else would be assumed that they were a couple, and then we would be asked if we were a couple. And I remember one time we told the waitress that we were together, and she brought our tickets separate, and I actually made her go back and bring her stuff up together. Because I was just like, no, we're not about paying on two separate tickets. We are on the same ticket. It doesn't matter. It's the same amount. It's just the principle of the thing. It's like, no, we are here together. You brought them. We were with another couple. It's like, you brought them their ticket with no question, but you show up and hand me hand us two separate tickets. Like, no, I'm not cool with that. And so, like that, so like I said, that feeling of invisibility. And so like in talking, with our friends about this, it's sort of like, I mean, like our friends recognize, the friends that we were with recognize, like, okay, that was wrong. Like they were wrong for that. But then telling other people like this happened, people were like, oh, maybe, but it was like, no, you don't understand. We were at the table with other people. It was clear we were couples, and they still brought us the ticket separate. And so that whole feeling of where people just don't want to think about it, and don't want to think about, as much as people of color, people are like, oh, we don't know, we don't see race, oh no, racism doesn't exist. It's like that's compounded whenever you're in an interracial relationship, and then people all of a sudden just think, well, see, racism can't exist because you guys are together. And it's like, yeah, we're together, but we also have to deal with people's nonsense, and people's nonsense becomes very visible. Racist nonsense becomes very visible whenever you're walking into some place and you get treated differently and it's like you're a couple. So you just like y'all said about walking into a country and you're treated differently, and the only reason could be because of racism. Or like, you know, something like my stuff hasn't been as serious as that, and I hate that y'all have to experience that. But like mine has been as simple as we're going to a furniture store to buy furniture. I walk into the furniture store, and because you know how they always have to make you like work with somebody if you haven't bought stuff yet, like that, like sales is dumb. Like it's like, oh, you have to work. It's like, I just want to buy a chair. I don't need to like work with somebody. Can I just take the chair up to the cash register and you ring me out? But anyway, so like you walk up into the store and I walk into the store first and they look at me like, and nobody wants to approach me. But then as soon as my husband walks in, everybody who's sitting at the desk, like, it's like a bunch of vultures, and they're trying to figure out like, okay, who's gonna work with them? I'm like, yeah, we here together. I walked in first. I've been here for 5 minutes. Y'all ain't said nothing to me. So it's like that type of level of stuff that makes you feel just super like socially, where people just don't even understand like the level of stuff, the level of microaggressions that you experience, and that can be very isolating, and that can make you feel, like I said, hyper visible, but also extremely invisible at the same time.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. I do feel like our relationship has been very fetishized from the beginning, and growing up, you know, as a biracial Asian woman in the United States, that is one of, I think, my, you know, most prominent and kind of most painful aspects of racism that I've had to personally deal with is sexual fetishization of my ethnicity. And so being in a relationship where it's compounded, right, by fetishization of Black men, and the assumptions, you know, people making comments all the time of like, oh, you're lucky, like, I wish I had an Asian wife. What does that mean? What does that mean? You know, it means a lot of garbage that I don't want to engage in, I don't want to hear, because I know what it means. You know, people using terms like jungle fever, you know, to refer to either of us, and then knowing that, you know, hopefully we will bring children into this world, and that they will be further, you know, they will be further fetishized, like a combination of all of those things. And I think that's definitely a part of, you know, our surroundings. That's constantly something that we think about, something that we deal with. But the way that we I think, have developed in dealing with it is by seeking out relationships with other interracial couples. Because especially where both partners are people of color. And I think that's helped us feel supported and seen, because you can feel quite like everywhere we go, people are looking at us, right? Because we don't look like every other couple that's walking around, whether in Haiti or in Asia or in the United States, you know, people are curious. It always grabs their attention. But the way that people seem to conceptualize it is by projecting a lot on us, and feeling the need to like carry that and balance that all the time feels like a lot of pressure. And so I think finding other people who are in similar positions, especially, you know, while traveling abroad, has been really important for us, to be able to deal with everyday life.
Yeah, I think I think in terms of the culture for my family is, so all of my family on my Indian side are all women of color who are all married to white men, actually. So in that sense, it's actually very, very normal for me. And then also, I think like because I'm biracial, there's a very low chance I'm going to meet a biracial white and Indian man, right? So I think I always figured that I was going to be in an interracial relationship. So I think on that side of things, it is fairly normal. I mean, we're also younger, and I think people are, I don't know, I feel like I know more interracial couples, especially who are younger. What do you think about culture around it?
Yeah, I'd actually never like thought consciously about your family, but that is really remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that your mom and her two sisters, yeah, all three of them
Mm-hmm.
married white men. But even like my cousin whose wedding we went to
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago, white man, Indian woman. So
Mm-hmm.
it seems like it shows up all the time. So I guess that makes it very normal, at least like in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's odd in that, yeah, like there's no reason that in your family, like two of the three married couples are like a white man and an Indian woman. So I think it's just, our families just have been strange in terms of like being very similar to how we are. So I feel like we haven't had a lot of issues in terms of our immediate social circles. Yeah. And then our last question was about advice to people in interracial relationships. And Elizabeth, you were talking about that a little bit already in terms of just connecting with other couples who are in interracial relationships, to just be able to connect about things that you're going through and to receive support in that. I'm mindful of our time, but are there any other comments about just advice to people who might be listening, whether they're currently in interracial relationships or they're raising kids who might be in interracial relationships in the future? Just any advice on that topic?
Yeah, so I think that, and I'll speak particularly to the where there's a white person involved as opposed to two minorities, because I think that is a different experience in and of itself, and there's different considerations. But I think that something that a trend that I've noticed, I think particularly along the black-white spectrum, but it can be seen just about everywhere, where I think that that often the partner of color might feel that they have to assimilate and that they have to kind of push their culture down or push who they are down, push their experiences, their ethnicity, whatever, down, and to kind of to make things sort of feel even. And I think that is a mistake, and that's a mistake that's going to cost in the long run. Also, not talking about race and not having honest conversations about your experiences with racism as a minority, and for the person in the relationship who's white to understand their whiteness and how whiteness works and to be aware of that. I think that is a huge mistake, and I've seen time and time again where stuff like what we've seen in the news media for like the last 5 or so years starts to happen, and or racial issues maybe hit home in a more direct way, and then all of a sudden it's like it's almost like coming out, like you have to reveal to your partner that you're black or that you're a minority, and then there's this whole upheaval in the relationship. And so I say that in that my advice is to put it out there early, deal with it, wrestle with it, and as a person of color, do not gaslight yourself. If you see red flags, if people are okay with using certain verbiage around you, or if you're aware of certain, basically if follow your nose. If somebody is acting racist, even if it's your partner, even if they're saying, I love you, even if they're saying whatever, get out. Like, I mean, watch the movie Get Out. That's like the test case of like everything. But seriously, get out. If you're married, getting out might not be an option for you, but you have got to work on that. You've got to go to counseling. And, you know, I can't direct you in terms of like if a divorce or whatever's in order. That's, you know, I'm not going to counsel on that, but you have to do what your conscience tells you to do on that. But it's something that you can't bury, and it's something that you can't act like isn't an issue, because it will hurt you in the long run. And if you have children, it'll hurt your children in the long run. And it's just not a good look. It is not a good look, and it doesn't feel good at the end of the day.
Yeah, Ali, I would definitely second that in terms of communication. Like, I think we're lucky that we're talking about it early in our marriage, right? And like I think the more you talk about it, the easier it gets over time. And like, your partner should be someone who's like in your corner, right? Like I care how like Nick feels about like racial issues, and like he cares how I feel about them, right? And like, yeah, it's just important that we're able to be real with each other about how things affect us, and yeah, like not get too abstract, but really rooted in like, how is this experience like affecting me right now? Like, how is this conversation affecting me right now? And yeah, so just be really honest with that, and also to be honest about what your needs are, right? Like, I need you to listen with this, or I need you to explain this, right? I think that's really important. And yeah, I mean, even as we were thinking about couples to invite to the webinar, right? Like, there are a lot of interracial couples I know who would probably not be ready to talk publicly, right, about their relationship. And just everyone is in different spots, right? And it really does take a lot of intentionality to make it a part of your relationship that's healthy, rather than something that's just shoved under the rug. No.
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna finish here then, but thank you so much to all of our guests. Thank you, Mark and Elizabeth, and thank you, Ali, and thank you, Ben, even though he's not here, that he was all right, you know, his marriage being talked about.
Cleaning for the Christmas party tomorrow, so that's.
So yeah, and thank you to all our listeners. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. So we're gonna sign off. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.